Hello everyone, welcome to Shell Lectures. So in this video, we'll be talking about reproduction in organisms, NCERT class 12 biology topic. So the first topic is lifespan. So each organism, it can live for only a certain period of time. And what is exactly lifespan? It's nothing but the period which starts from birth to natural death of an organism. It may be very short, like nearly for 1 day or 2 days. Even there are organisms which have lifespan ranging from 1 to 2 days, and there are also organisms whose lifespans range from nearly 150 years, 200 years and all that, and it's not at all correlated with their sizes. For example, crows and parrots, they are of the same size of course, but their lifespan show a very wide difference that we'll be looking at the other slides. Parrot shows a very high lifespan, whereas crow does not. Also, a mango tree, it's very large than a peepal tree, but still its lifespan is shorter than the peepal tree. So what is reproduction? So what is the introduction that we can give to reproduction? So every organism has to die. That is an unavoidable phenomenon which has to occur in every living organism. But the unicellular organisms are immortal. That is, they live forever, but the other organisms, the death is a very certain thing. So there must be some process which will ensure the continuity. So a particular generation must continue. So there must be some process. So that's what we are speaking about, reproduction. So first of all, let's know the lifespans of some organisms. Like elephant, it ranges from 60 to 90 years. Rose, it's from 5 to 7 years. Dog, 20 to 30 years. Butterfly, just 1 to 2 weeks. Crow, 15 years. Banana tree, 25 years. Cow, 25 years. Parrot, 100 to 140 years. That's really huge. Crocodile, 60 years. Horse, 50 years. Fruit fly, just 1 day. Rice plant, 4 months. Tortoise, 100 to 150 years. Banyan tree, 200 years. Peepal tree, 2000 to 3000 years. So you can compare this with mango tree, banyan tree and all. It's like very huge. Then the sequoia tree, 3000 to 3500 years. And Lariat tridentata, which is the oldest species ever known, a plant species ever known, that lifespan is 11,700 years, and that's really shaky. So talking about reproduction, what is reproduction? It's a biological process in which an organism gives rise to young ones which are similar to itself. So what is the main aim of reproduction? To enable the continuity of species, to ensure that the race goes on continuing. So there is a cycle which continues, people are born and they give birth to young ones, and the young ones grow up and they reproduce and they give birth to young ones and they die. So there is a cycle of birth, growth and death which goes on. So the factors that affect reproduction are organisms' habitat and internal physiology. Types of reproduction: sexual and asexual. Asexual, there is no fusion of gametes take place. There is only one parent which is involved in asexual reproduction. That is known as without involvement of gamete formation. But talking about sexual reproduction, two members of opposite sex, they actually involve fusion of male and female gametes, and such reproduction types are known as sexual reproduction. By asexual reproduction, some offsprings are produced. They are exactly similar to their parent. They are not only same to one another, but also they are exactly similar to their parent. And the term which we use to coin such exactly morphologically and genetically similar individuals as their parents is known as clone. So it's common among unicellular organisms and also some simple higher plants and animals. But unicellular organisms, majority follow asexual reproduction. So the types of asexual reproduction: binary fission, first of all. Binary. So a fission takes place, a separation takes place, so that the organism splits into two. So the organism divides into two and it gives rise to two individuals. A cell divides into two and each rapidly grows into an adult. For example, we can take amoeba or we can take paramecium. As you can see in the figure which is given at the right, there is a cell and then the nucleus divides and then the cytoplasm also divides, and then you are given with two daughter cells. So this happens mostly in protists and monurians. So the next type of asexual reproduction which takes place in yeast and hydra is bud formation. Here the division is very small, unequal. As you can see that there is a small outgrowth which is known as a bud, which can be seen on the surface of the organism, right? So the bud actually remains with the parent till a stage of growth, but once it attains that stage, it gets separated and it anchors itself to another surface and it gets into a new organism. Then we have encystation and sporulation. So when unfavorable conditions are there, what amoeba does? I told you that amoeba undergoes binary fission, but this is also another kind of asexual reproduction that amoeba undergoes. So when there are unfavorable conditions, amoeba withdraws its pseudopodia, that is it just gives away its pseudopodia and it secretes a 3-layered hard covering, or it's also known as cyst, and hence this process is known as encystation. So it just covers itself by a 3-layered cyst. But when favorable conditions return, what will happen? This encysted amoeba, it divides. By what means? Multiple fission. It divides by multiple fission. You must remember this very carefully. After encystation, multiple fission happens. But it also can undergo binary fission. So it undergoes multiple fission. So multiple amount of amoeba organisms will be produced. And those amoeba organisms, minute amoeba, are known as pseudopodiospores. Then what happens? The cyst just burst out and the spores are liberated, and then they grow up into many amoebae, and this process is known as sporulation. The dispersal of spores and their growing up into many amoebae is known as sporulation. So there are also asexual reproductive structures called spores, which are very famous in kingdom fungi and also some plants like algae. The most common asexual spore which is being used by several organisms is zoospore. It's actually motile because it has a flagella and it's also microscopic. And we also have other asexual reproductive structures like conidia, which is present in penicillium, and we have buds as we had discussed earlier as in the cases of hydra and yeast, and also we have gemmules which is observed in case of sponge. So these are the examples which have been given. Zoospores is the first one. As you can see here, it has flagella and so it's motile. And then we have conidia of penicillium. Then the third thing is buds which are present in hydra and yeast. And the fourth thing is gemmules which you can find in sponges. So what is vegetative propagation? That is asexual type of reproduction, because here also only one type of organism is involved. It's vegetative propagation. So in plants, instead of asexual reproduction, we actually go with vegetative reproduction. So in plants, the units of vegetative propagation, that is the things which give rise to new organisms are like runner, rhizome, sucker, tuber, offset, bulb. All these are examples for vegetative propagules, because they are the ones which give rise to new plants. So what is fragmentation is what we have to know next. Fragmentation. So the body splits up into several fragments and each fragment develops into a new organism. That's it. It happens in hydra, and it's also a asexual type of reproduction because only one parent is involved. In addition to that, no gametes are fused here. Example for this is Pyrogyra. Then talking about water hyacinth. So here we are going to talk about the terror of Bengal. It's known as a terror of Bengal. So something it has done to Bengal, right? So it's just an aquatic plant which is Iconia. It's water hyacinth, and it is an invasive weed which is found in aquatic bodies and also in standing water. What happens is when this plant grows on water bodies, it just dissolves all the oxygen. So it takes up all the oxygen such that the aquatic organisms inside the water are unable to survive due to deficiency of oxygen. This plant actually it was brought to India only because of its beautiful flowers and the shape of leaves it had, because of its beautiful superficial appearance. But it can actually propagate vegetatively at a very phenomenal rate. That is a very fast rate and can spread to very large areas in a short period of time. So it's very, 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 very difficult to get rid of such kind of plants. Then talking about where do the eyes of potato arise from? We just learned about vegetative propagules. So for potato, it's eyes. So from where do these? You can see that white color outgrowths on potato surface. So when you actually determine, actually carefully look at where these things are originating, you can actually find that they will arise from the nodes which are present in the modified stems. Okay, so when the node comes into contact with some kind of water body or a damp soil, immediately it will produce roots and new plants, and a new plant will be formed. That's why the eyes of potato are very good examples for vegetative propagules. Also, we have the adventitious buds, like on the margin of the leaves of Bryophyllum, you can see adventitious buds which are produced, and those buds are also vegetative propagules which can arise and they can give rise to new plants. So what is the conclusion that we can derive? Asexual is very common among unicellular organisms and organisms which have a simple organization like algae and fungi, but they can also shift to sexual method of reproduction, before the adverse conditions are coming up. But asexual and sexual are exhibited by higher plants, as we saw just now, vegetative propagules, all that are asexual, vegetative reproduction. But sexual mode of reproduction is completely observed in animals. So in plants, both asexual and sexual is seen. In animals, only sexual is seen. So when we talk about sexual reproduction, it involves the formation of male and female gametes and their fusion. So it involves fertilization, and these gametes, they fuse together to form a thing known as zygote, which later develops to form a new organism via a lot of steps. So this sexual reproduction results in offsprings and they are not identical to the parents or even among themselves. But asexual reproduction just produces exact copies of the parent. And it's a very slow process compared to asexual, and it's an elaborate and a complex process. So what are the phases of life that every organism undergoes? So all organisms have an age limit, that is a certain stage of growth which has to be attained before it can reproduce. So that stage in the, that phase of life that phase in the life of an organism is known as juvenile phase, and in plants it's known as vegetative phase. We can say that that's a stage of growth and maturity that the organism must attain, after which it can reproduce. So the end of juvenile phase can easily be seen in some flowering plants which start to flower. So that phase is known as reproductive phase. And then these phases can clearly be marked in annuals and biennial types. Here you can actually mark these phases, like all these phases, very easily. Whereas in perennial species it's very difficult. Also, a few plants exhibit unusual flowering. That is, like bamboo, it flowers only once in its lifetime, and soon after it flowers, nearly for 50 to 100 years it lives, and then it flowers, and then it produces a large number of fruits, and then it dies. Also, we have another plant, Neelakurunji, which is a very famous icon of South India, Strobilanthes kundiana. It flowers once in 12 years, and it recently flowered during September to October 2006. So we can expect that it will be, it would have flowered around 2018. So estrus and menstrual cycle. So the females of placental mammals, the mammals which have placenta, they exhibit cyclical changes in the activities of ovaries, like their activities of hormones and all, their ducts and their female reproductive system undergoes a cycle, and that's what is known as menstrual cycle. So that happens in primates. In non-primates like cows, sheep, rats, deers, dogs, tigers and all, this cyclical change is known as estrus cycle, but in primates like monkeys, apes and humans, it's called menstrual cycle. But there is another one division between organisms which says seasonal breeders and continuous breeders. Seasonal breeders are nothing but the mammals which live in natural wild conditions. They show these cycles like menstrual and estrous cycle only during favorable conditions, that is certain times of the year. They are known as seasonal breeders, and in mammals in which they are reproductively active throughout the year, it's known as continuous breeders. So the last phase of life is senescent phase. It's the end of reproductive phase, which marks the beginning of, old age, or you're nearing death. That's what. So it's like unavoidable phenomenon in any living organism. So old age ultimately leads to death. So here slowing of metabolism occurs. So it's the last phase of lifespan. So what is the thing which regulates the transition between these juvenile, reproductive and senescent phase? So hormones are responsible for this transition which is taking place. So also hormones and other environmental factors, they regulate the reproductive processes which are taking place in organisms, and also several other associated behavioral expressions of organisms. So what are the events in fertilization? So sexual reproduction, it's actually the fusion of male and female gametes, then zygote first formed, then embryo, then a new organism. So all these events are put together in three main steps which are known as pre-fertilization, that is events which happen before fertilization, and fertilization, those which happen during fertilization, and post-fertilization which happen after fertilization. So what are the pre-fertilization events? Pre-fertilization events are those which occur prior to the fusion of gametes, prior to fertilization. So they are gametogenesis and gamete transfer. Gametogenesis, it's the formation of gametes. Like haploid, male and female gametes have to be formed. And then we have to fuse them, right? So in some algae, like we can have examples like Cladophora, there the gametes are similar in appearance. So they are known as homogametes. The male and female gametes are similar in appearance. So they are also known as isogametes or homogametes. But in majority of sexually reproducing organisms, the gametes are of different types. Like the male gamete is a very small one, and it's also motile, and it's known as anthroid or sperm. And the female is like stationary, and it's very large, and it may be egg or ovum. So those kind of gametes are known as heterogametes, and it is the type of gametes which are present in majority of sexually reproducing organisms. So also we need to know about the sexuality in organisms. Like plants, they can have both male and female in the same organism. They are known as bisexual, and if a male is on a separate plant and the female is on the other, it's known as unisexual. So in fungi and plants also we have homothallic and monoecious. Those names are which actually monoecious organisms are bisexual. That is, they have both sexes in the same organism. Whereas heterothallic and dioecious and unisexual refer to separate sexes on two different organisms. In flowering plants, if only the male flower is there and it's a unisexual plant, it's known as staminate. It only bears stamens. And if it's a female, it's known as pistillate. It bears only pistils. In some flowers, there may be both male and female flowers, as I told you, monoecious, or they may be on separate flowers, they are dioecious. So some examples for monoecious are cucurbita and coconuts, and for dioecious, it's papaya and date palm. Also in animals, we must know some organisms which are termed as hermaphrodites, which are like they possess both male and female organs in the same organism, like earthworm, sponge, tapeworm, and leech. All these organisms are hermaphrodites. But unisexual species, a very good example is cockroach, and a very majority of other animals are unisexual. So what is the cell division that has to occur during gamete formation? We all know that gametes are haploid. So from diploid, how can they be produced? So some kind of a cell division has to occur, right? So the body from which they arise may be haploid or diploid, but gametes are always haploid. So haploid, if the parent is itself haploid, it cannot undergo reduction division, so it will undergo mitosis. But in diploid organism, there are specific cells which are known as myocytes, which are also known as gamete mother cells, which undergo meiosis to produce gametes. So those gametes fuse together and they form a new organism. So the chromosomes in myocytes and gametes have been given here. That is, in myocyte it will be 2n because it's diploid, and in gamete it's n. Human being 46-23, housefly 12-6, rat 42-21, dog 78-39, cat 38-19, fruit fly 8-4. Ophioglossom, it's a fern, and it has the highest chromosome number in myocyte and gamete. It's 1260 in chromosome and 630 in gamete. Apple, 34-17. Rice, it's 24-12. Maize, 20-10. Potato, 48-24. Butterfly, 380-190. Onion, 16-8. Also, we need to know about gamete transfer. So, the gametes have to be transferred. Now, the gametes are formed, so also they have to be transferred. So, this process of transfer and fusion is known as fertilization. Before that, the gametes must be transferred. So, the male gamete is, motile and it's movable in many organisms, but female gamete is stationary, as I told you earlier. But there are some exceptions like fungi and algae in which both the gametes are motile or both the gametes are non-motile, homogametes. So, we need a medium under which this male gamete can meet the female gamete. So, for algae, bryophytes and pteridophytes, in water this thing takes place, okay. So, they produce a large number of male gametes. Why? Why are large number of male gametes produced? Because only when large number of male gametes are produced, they can actually reach, during the passage itself, a lot of, male gametes may be lost. So what happens? They produce a large number of male gametes so that during transport, though many male gametes are lost, they may reach the female gametes. In seed plants, pollen grains are the ones which carry the male gametes, and the ovule have the egg, and then they have to be transferred through the pollen tube to the ovule through a process which is known as pollination, and then it leads to fertilization. But if it's self-fertilizing, like bisexual, both the things are present on the same plant, both male and female are present on the same plant, then it's relatively easy. Or as anthers and stigma are very close, so they can easily undergo fertilization and gamete transfer. All those processes are pretty easy. But in cross-pollinating plants like dioecious, like one is here and the other is there, so the special event has to take place. That's what is known as pollination, the transfer of pollen from one plant to the stigma of other plant. So the pollen grains are going to germinate on the stigma, and the pollen tube is going to reach the ovule, and then they are going to discharge the male gametes, and they are going to fuse with the female reproductive structures, and new organisms will be formed. So for fertilization, the very important aspects is that the gametes should be produced well, they should be formed well, gametogenesis should be a success. Also, the coming together of gametes and the fusion of gametes is also as important. So now let's talk about fertilization. It's also known as syngamy, and it results in the formation of a zygote. It's a diploid zygote because two gametes, haploid gametes, are fusing together, so diploid zygote will be formed obviously. But in some organisms, we need to note here that in some organisms like rotifers, honeybees and turkeys, and even some lizards, the female gamete, without even the involvement of a male gamete, develops into a new organism. So in that case, a pure fertilization doesn't occur. So that kind of phenomenon are known as parthenogenesis. So we have two kinds of parthenogenesis, which are arenotoky and teleotoky. So arenotoky or haploid parthenogenesis and teleotoky or diploid parthenogenesis are two types of parthenogenesis. So arenotoky is seen in honeybee, and it's also seen in drones, which are haploid males, and they are developed from unfertilized eggs. But queens develop from fertilized eggs. They are actually fertile females. But workers, they are sterile females, but still they develop from fertilized eggs. But drones, which are males, they are haploid and they are derived from unfertilized eggs. But teleotoky is diploid parthenogenesis. And artificial parthenogenesis can also be induced by, pricking of needle, UV rays, electric shock chemicals, all these can induce artificial parthenogenesis. So what is external fertilization? It takes place in an external medium. Like as we talked just now, in algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes and a lot of other aquatic organisms, syngamy occurs in the external medium, that is outside the body of the organism. So this type of gamete fusion is known as external fertilization. So organisms which undergo this kind of fertilization, actually they exhibit a great synchrony between the sexes, because they release a large number of gametes, because some may be lost in transits and then they reach the female gamete and syngamy occurs. And actually this happens in bony fishes and frogs. As very large number of male gametes are produced, very large number of offsprings are also produced, as it's noticed in the cases of fishes and frogs. But a very big disadvantage here is that as the zygote is formed externally, the organism is very well vulnerable to predators up to a certain period of life. It must be under the care of its parent, but it's not possible in external fertilization. Whereas in internal fertilization, which occurs in many terrestrial organisms like fungi, reptiles, birds, mammals, and also in some bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms and angiosperms, the fertilization occurs inside the body, and this process is known as internal fertilization. The egg is formed inside the female body and the sperm is sent inside the female body and they fuse together, and the zygote is also formed inside the human body. So all these happens inside. So here the proper embryonic care is there, and also proper care after birth is also there, which is absent in external fertilization. They are not threatened, they are not vulnerable to any kind of threat. So what happens after fertilization? So zygote is formed, as we know, it's universal. It's a vital link that ensures a continuity between several generations. So in organisms with external fertilization, zygote is formed out, as we told earlier, like water. But in internal fertilization, the zygote is formed inside the body of the organism. Like fungi and algae, organisms like fungi and algae, the zygote, as soon as it's formed, before getting into any further process, it forms a thick wall around itself so that it does not undergo any damage, because it's external fertilization. Those organisms are actually undergoing external fertilization, so there is a chance that predators can cause a damage to it. So it just produces a thick wall around it so that it's resistant to desiccation and damage. So it also undergoes a period of rest before it can actually germinate. But in organisms which have haploid life cycle, the zygote divides by meiosis and it forms haploid spores, and then they form new individuals. So then talking about embryogenesis, that is a formation of embryo. So after zygote, embryo forms. So during embryogenesis, the zygote undergoes cell division like mitosis, and it also undergoes cell differentiation. Cell division, what does it do? It increases the number of cells. Cell differentiation, it helps the group of cells to undergo modification to form specialized tissues. The word differentiation itself means modification to form different tissues. But division, it increases the number of cells so that a new organism is formed. So what is oviparity and viviparity? There is a big O in oviparity. From that itself we can remember that it's something which is related to eggs. So animals are categorized into oviparous and viviparous. That is the zygote, where the development of zygote takes place, whether inside or outside. That's what is known as oviparity or viviparity. So this can be inferred by the organism whether it lays the fertilized or unfertilized eggs, or whether it gives birth to young ones. Like oviparous animals like reptiles and birds, the fertilized eggs are produced and they are covered by calcareous shell so that they are they are very safe, and they are also laid in a safe place. And after a period of incubation, like for a few days or even few months, they just they hatch and they produce new organisms. But in viviparous, it's not like that. Like human beings, the zygote is inside the body of the female organism. So after it attains a certain stage, like 9 months in human beings, it just gets expelled out of the body of the organism. It's just delivered. So here embryonic care is there, protection is also there. So viviparity is very, very advantageous than oviparity. So what are the further changes that take place? In flowering plants, as I told you earlier, the zygote is formed inside the ovule. So after fertilization takes place, all the floral parts like sepals, petals and stamens, they wither and fall off, but the pistil alone remains because it is the sexual reproducing part of the flower. So what happens is the zygote develops into the embryo, and the ovule develops into the seed, and the ovary develops into the fruit, and it also develops a thick wall which is known as a pericarp, which is later differentiated into endocarp, mesocarp and epicarp. So it's protective in function. So after dispersal, what will happen? The seeds germinate and they produce new plants under favorable conditions. So we need to know classification of eggs. How are the eggs classified? So on the basis of the amount of yolk that is present, we can classify eggs into microlithical, that is it's present in if the yolk is present in very small amount as in mammals, and we can also say mesolithical, that is median amount as in amphibians like frog, and macro and megalithical, the yolk is present in a very large amount as you can see in reptiles and apes. And also on the basis of distribution of yolk, how the yolk is being distributed, isolithical or homolithical, equal. That happens in mammals, and in centrolithical it's insects, like it's central, and telolithical, the examples of frog, reptiles and apes. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Hope you liked this video and understood pretty well the chapter 1 of class 12 NCERT biology topic, that is reproduction in organisms. So subscribe to my channel if you have not done so far. Like and share this video to whomever you know. So soon I'll meet you with a lot of other videos on various other chapters on various other subjects. Thank you so much for watching.